Okay, welcome back to the Investigative Journal on this June 16th, 2016 day on our calendar. I'm your host, Greg Anthony. You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com. You can listen to my show every evening from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. That's on FirstAmendmentRadio.com. They also play the show at 11 a.m. Pacific time. Nice of them to do that. Gives you one more chance to get the truth. And then if you can't get it either of those times, go to my long-standing website at arcticbeacon.com, arcticbeacon.com. I've been reporting on the Vatican-led New World Order and all its tentacles for over a decade on the internet because the mainstream media will not allow this story out, and either will most of the alternative media. So someone long ago nicknamed my show the alternative to the alternative media. And let me tell you this, the truth really starts here, and we get really disappointed when you don't come and listen to this side of the story, because I'm telling you, if you don't listen here, you're not getting the full story. So let's look again. Like I told you at the beginning of the week, when this Orlando shooting hit, nothing would be on the major news channels all week except this story. And I'm being proved right. It's pretty simple. They do this all the time. And I'm sure by next Monday, there'll be other little stories creeping in. They're starting to do that now on the major networks. You get the same news all over the world now. I mean, there's no really freedom of the press anymore. They bought that out a long time ago. And one of the more interesting things, Obama came out and stated that right after this occurred, that he wants all the government buildings to run their all military installations to go to put the flag at half-mast until today, until June 16th, 2016. And I tried to figure out why. It didn't make sense to me. You could run the half-mast for one day. You could run it a whole week. But why today? So he wanted it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, June 16th. So I started thinking, does that date have any significance? Well, there are 3 6s in that date. You got 666 right in there in June 16th, 2016. Now, that could be one occult symbol. We know 666 stands for their worshiping master Lucifer. Or it could be something else. Then I started wondering, okay, the Pulse nightclub is there, right? Pulse nightclub. And somebody sent me this, and then I started thinking, whoa, what's this all about? And I still can't figure it out. Maybe you can, but check it out. On July 16th, 2016, that's 1 month from now, there is going to be a big, huge rally in Washington. It's already been organized at the Washington Mall. Hundreds or thousands of people are converging there, and it's a group called Pulse. Now, this was organized before the shooting at the Pulse nightclub. Now, what do they have in common? Well, when you look up Pulse and this whole thing, they're a Christian evangelical organization coming on the 16th. So you take it from there. Could it mean the flag running half-staff is the demise of Christianity? What do you know? Who knows? But you check that out, because it's an interesting scenario that I really I'm glad somebody pointed that out to me. Boy, you get a lot of people out there doing a heck of a job in reporting. And I thought what we'd do today, look, I got a couple things I want to get to this week. One about those 40 holistic doctors that have been mysteriously either committing suicide or getting murdered since June of 2015. Now, that story has to be looked into, so I was going to do that. Then I have a show that I was going to do. I did a whole week on Tony Alamo, and I wanted to bring out some of the testimony from the undercover agents that were telling, really, when they turned tail in the FBI, about what they were supposed to do to frame Tony, and this is going over 20 to 30 years they've been trying this. But I had to put that off, and I'm going to get to that next week. I do have someone from the Alamo Ministry again coming on. because I think it's an important story. It shows how we have no freedom of religion left in this country unless you kiss the Pope's ring, so to speak. So I want to get to those, but I knew this week would be, no one would be listening, really. They want to, be checking out the internet on every angle, and I don't blame you, because you're getting, the only true reporting you get is after the fact reporting from people who are seeing the discrepancies of this story in Orlando, just like they did at Sandy Hook, just like they did in San Bernardino, just like happened in 9/11, Oklahoma City, the whole shot. So I knew that would be going on. So I thought today what we do, let's forget about the government for a minute. Let's forget about the everything else but the news media. Now, if you don't have a independent news media, you're not going to get the truth. And this story shows you that we have none left. The only reporting we're getting is from people on the internet, just people who aren't professional journalists, and I'm not saying you have to be to get to a story, but professional journalists that are independent, real investigative reporters get paid so they have the time to do this. And let me explain what I'm getting at. I started out in this business when it wasn't totally controlled. It was on the precipice of being totally controlled. I was watching newspapers this is back in the late 70s, 80s. I was watching newspapers getting swallowed up, but I still worked for a couple where there was independent reporting. And I covered my share of shootings, covered my share of political rallies, covered my share of most grisly stories you want to talk about. And it was done in a completely different manner. We were independent of the government. We were independent, and we had editors who said this to me: Greg, here's the camera, here's this, I want you to get the scoop on this, I want you to get the story, do anything, get the story. And blood and guts sells newspapers. So I know when I went out to a scene, I was trying to get a story and beat the next newspaper from getting something. So I would I would hit every angle I could. I'd get every picture I could. I'd go to the back of a building. I remember covering a story when there was a fire. The fire department was called. There was a big, huge explosion in a house, and we found a dead baby in the oven. I was a journalist, and we found this baby, and guess what? I had to sneak in there and get the picture, get a shot. Now, I didn't know if they were going to run it or not, but I could tell you that there was a dead baby in there. I wasn't taking the word of the government for that story. And then we found the mother, who was all painted in red, in some dumpster down the street, and I got a shot of that. Now, I had to run around. I had to run from one place to another, go through a yard without the government seeing me, and almost getting bit by a dog. But I got the story. And then I went to the hospital, and I started getting the story there of what happened to this woman, the whole shot. So that was just one little incident. But that's how you work. Now, can you imagine if you were at a shooting like this? Now, think about this. Back in the 1920s, remember the St. Valentine's Day massacre, where the mafia lined up all these guys and they shot them in that garage? Oh, there were shots. The journalists snuck in there and gave you shots right on the front page. I remember when I was in Italy in the 80s, and I knew a mafia guy who worked for the Camorra. And he lived in my small little town, and we left one morning. I didn't even know he was in the mafia. He was a right-hand man to the Camorra. I saw his picture right on the front page of the Corriere della Sera and the La Repubblica, sitting there in a barber chair with blood all over the place. So don't tell me that newspapers don't do it. And let me tell you this, with the advent of all these YouTubes and with the advent of all these people that would be there with cameras, with cell phones, with a news media, if it was honest, would give you grisly pictures I mean, enough to prove that this event really occurred. You'd see angles from different places, all this stuff. But what has happened is there is no independent media, so you're not getting the true story. And that is very evident by looking at all the stories coming out after the fact. So what I'm getting at is, look, I don't need to cow down to Bill O'Reilly and all these guys on CNN. Half of these women on CNN, they weren't even born when I was covering these stories. I started out probably the same time O'Reilly did. We just went in different directions. I started out the same time as some of these older reporters, that are selling out to the CNN or Fox. I don't have anything to bow down to them. I realized either I sell out or I go my own way and try to get to the truth. That's why we got into this business. You don't think for 1 second those guys on Fox are giving you anything but the truth, and they know about it too. They're the scum of the earth as far as I'm concerned. And they can make all their money going. It's just an amazing story. And this story highlights it also. I'm just talking about the press. And when you got a problem like this, you got a huge problem. And I told you the ingredients to pull off these false flags, to completely brainwash the people that are watching this stuff, thinking it's real, thinking these people really died. And what you need is a democratic society, because false flags aren't needed in dictatorships like in North Korea. They got total control anyway. They can just tell you, hey, this is the way it is, or you're dead. And sometimes, maybe that's a better way sometimes, because we live in an age of deception. So here you have that ingredient. You got a government that's selling you out. Obama, I believe, is an embedded insider here to destroy this country and Christianity. And when you have a government working against you from the inside out, using all of these, and this story shows you all of their tactics and what they can do. And if you don't, and the third ingredient, of course, is a state-controlled press. That's what we have. We have these people lying to you right on the air, right as I speak. I just kept the TV on mute to watch this. And it's just incredible. Now, going back to that, I was fortunate one time in my life when I came back from Rome. I knew I had to get out of journalism, but I had this one idea in my life. I want to own my own newspaper. Now, I couldn't go out and buy the Washington Post, but I could buy a small little newspaper in a small little town in Idaho. And I did. And this was right before the internet came in. It lasted a few years, because when the internet came in, there was no advertising. It was a very small town. But it was one of the best times of my life, because I got to do it all. I got to put the paper out. I got to write the paper. I got to sell the ads. I got to talk to the people in the community. I got to see how politicians, even there in the small-time level, try to control you. I had one advertiser, for example. He did a page ad. Without him, I probably wouldn't be able to put the paper out one week. Guess what? When he didn't like one of my stories, he pulled his ads, because he was a real staunch whatever, and I was talking about the people on the other side of the tracks, and he didn't like that. So he forced my hand, and I went and talked to him, and I said, listen, if you want to do it, go right ahead, but I ain't changing my stance. And after a couple of weeks, he put it back in. So I learned the hard way that way. I knew it was that way, but I couldn't cover. So I went into a little hibernation, small little town, said, get away from the main news that I used to cover, big stories, because the bigger they are, the more corrupt they are. But I saw it even in the small town level. But what I'm getting at is it made me, I had an idea. I said, I want to have a little different paper. So I started researching what newspapers were like in this country and in other countries in the 1800s. I went to get everything I could, and I didn't have the internet then, so I had to really look at this. And what I saw was a complete independence. I saw true story. I saw things coming from different angles. I saw a whole completely different type of communication. There were no pictures, there were no videos, there were no movies. People actually used their words to create them. And it was the most refreshing thing I ever saw. So I incorporated that in my newspaper. I printed it as if it was a paper in the 1800s. And my, did it get interest. Because what I did was I said, well, I can't afford journalists. I can't afford to hire a reporter. I had to do everything on my own. I think I had one secretary helping me. So what I did was I called to the community. I said, I need somebody to cover the city council meeting. And I got 3 women that came. They had no journalism experience. I said, just go there and write it down on a napkin. I don't care. And then we'll put in your words. And you would not believe what it cost. It was fantastic. One agreed with them, one didn't. And I put everything in there, and everybody started to get to like that. Somebody came in and said, hey, could I cover the fire department meeting? Yeah, sure, go ahead. And it was a breath of fresh air. In fact, I wrote the newspaper in a more of an old style. I didn't start out with the typical American lead, give your story, you're taught as a journalist. First paragraph has to be 30 words or less, and it better get the reader to listen. That's good. People don't read. When you do studies on newspapers, and it's probably less now, the way you write an inverted pyramid, because you know that they may read the first paragraph, they may not even read that, they may read the headline and go on, and then you put in the top facts, and maybe they read 3 paragraphs, etc., etc. So just to give you my experience. And when I left that, I said, there is no room for me, because I was watching this country go down the tubes, even in the 90s. Chemtrails started, and I said, God, there's got to be a way to do this. The only place that would talk about the Vatican would be on the alternative, so I migrated there instead of like selling out and working for CNN or something, or being well, I could have been a sports reporter, but why? I used to play sports. I don't want to know more about them. I want to do something substantial in the journalism field, and you can't do it. And so when I talk about this, I say, listen, if this was a true story, you would have seen angles from all over. You'd have journalists that were trying to get a scoop. You'd see blood and guts. You'd see what sells newspapers, what sells TV stations, but not this sanitized version they give you. And let me tell you, this is the most ridiculous. If you look, and now I get a lot of this information from just average people who know they're being bullshitted, and they can't take it anymore. And I've got compiled all of the great things done in the 4 days that show this is completely a false flag hoax. No one died there, and if they did, we would have known it. And every angle of this story, from the beginning of it to where they're at today, shows me that the media, the government, and what the sad thing is here, and the powers that be, the puppet masters, pulling the strings, the Vatican people on the top, the people, the money people, all are they're corrupt, and they know this is a lie. The presidential candidates know it. The journalists know it. The president knows it. All of the people behind the scenes know it, and they have played us like the masses like dummies. And they know they don't even have to do a good job at it. I am telling you, they need to hire somebody from Hollywood that can do a better job, because when you look at the footage you see, it is amazing that people believe it. And like I said, I'm concentrating this first part just on the media to give you an idea of what should have been done. Now, if it was true, if I was the editor of let's say we had a real live independent newspaper, where are all these newspapers? Where's the local people doing a local story that contradicts CNN? None. Nothing. Or the Washington Post, or the New York Times, or the Chicago Tribune, any of these big papers. Where is even a regional paper from Des Moines, Iowa? Or from near there? Where was this? Where's the regional paper from Tampa doing a story that contradicts anything? Where's the reporter that can get inside that building, inside the hospital, to see what's really going on? There aren't any. Because they realize to do this, there are going to be nosy people, right? But they have to cordon the area off. And if you watch the opening shots of this whole thing, it'll show you what they did. Starting from the beginning to the end, it is a false flag hoax. Just the fact there were no ambulances on the scene, just the fact that the police scanners You know how many private ambulance companies would have to be there? None of them were called. And what also would be interesting in this story is when they get, somebody in Sandy Hook, I don't know, they'll probably realize they made a mistake in Sandy Hook. But one of the things they did, if there were so many people killed there in Sandy Hook in that school, they would have had to call, they have companies that have to sanitize these buildings from the blood scattering. This is a major job. There was not one company that specialized in that was ever called to Sandy Hook. So that told you there was no blood. Now maybe they realized that and they'll call some fake company to do it. But why isn't anybody in that building now? Where's a reporter that can sneak around? You know why? From the beginning, they call the fire departments, they call the rescue teams, they call everybody. You see there was a military presence to keep people out, to cordon the area off so they can get away with this. Now, if there was a journalist that tried to get in there, he wouldn't be able to because he wouldn't be allowed near that place. And then you get the stupid footage coming out all over the world, and that's all you ever see. And then they start bringing in their crisis actors. You're always going to have somebody that fake cries and tells you they lost their loved one in there. And, oh boy, there's a guy they found something so interesting on, Christine Lineman, whose son was supposedly in there. Oh boy, that's a good one. Like I said, they got to hire better actors. They got to hire people that know how to cry. Now, for example, I did some acting, and I can cry on demand. Yes, I can cry on demand, and that's a special talent. These people can't. Now, if they would have hired me, that's the kind of person they need, because I can cry on demand. Within 5 seconds, I can have tears actually rolling down my eyes if I choose to. Because I've had a lot of shitty things happen in my life, and all I had to do is recall one of them. And boy, do I start crying. But they can't do that. And that's what I'm getting at. When you look at the pictures, when you look at all this video we have, that's the first sign. And let me end this half hour and we'll get back and look at some of this stuff. I can't show it to you here, but who cares? Maybe my words can resonate so you start looking at it more. You got all the fancy technical stuff now, don't we? And all the fancy technical stuff and all the things of our, all of the things that seem to be so much better than when we just had to write notes on a piece of paper and pencil, and basically you had to even typeset things, Linotype. That's when I started out. The first newspaper I worked for, they were still using Linotype. But we had better coverage. The more technical we get, the worse coverage we get. And let me tell you, if I was an editor, just say, let's make this a kind of a hypothetical situation. If I was an editor of any one of those organizations, every one of those guys I sent out would be fired. Anderson Cooper, the whole works. Did you notice how they all converged there? All the reporters were there. What the heck were they giving us the same? They would all been fired. Then I would have fired the people, anybody. The photographers would be gone. The film guys, gone. I need a crew that can get me a story here, not a government whitewash story. But they worked together with them, everybody at the top. But if I was the editor, none of them would be there. And if I was the editor of a real live newspaper that was telling you the truth, my first advice to one of these, I'd give the reporter the camera and his paper and pencil, and I said, you better get me something good. You better get me a scoop on this story. I want to know the truth of what really happened there. And that's what you would see in my newspaper. But they don't exist anymore. Back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the Left Behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.
Okay, we are back for the second half hour of the Investigative Journal. You can listen to my show every evening, 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. on FirstAmendmentRadio.com. That's Pacific time, or go to my website at ArcticBeacon.com. Get shows going back 10 years talking about the Vatican-led New World Order and all its tentacles. This week, of course, we're featuring this Orlando shooting, the staged shooting, I believe. No one died there, I think. And I think that we've put together a pretty strong argument regarding that. What I tried to do is give you a historical look at false flags and false flag hoaxes, an intellectual look, looking back to this rather a modern phenomena of false flags. And I think I categorize people as either being three categories. That's one, believing hook, line, and sinker, what you're listening to on TV. Two, believing it was a false flag event that really occurred, which was done by your own government and their political ideas in order to blame it on Islamic terrorism, radical Islamic terrorism. And then the third possibility, of course, the one that I think is the strongest right now, is that it was a staged hoax, no one died, but again blaming it on Islamic radical terrorism. I also tried to give you a in-depth look briefly on the roots of terrorism and where it all comes from, which none of the people in this on your news broadcasts or even your politicians ever do, because they're protecting the very, very truth behind all of this. And the real sad thing about this story and how it shows that if your total government from top to bottom, all the religious leaders are echoing the false story here, then they have a hidden agenda. So it matters little your vote. It matters little if they're Democrat or Republican. One way or another, they're going to get what they want from you because they own you. And they show you this through this story. Now, I'm telling you, I'm going to go and piece a few things together here, give you about 10 or 11, 12 points on why this is a hoax, using some information that people have sent me. And I'll tell you, there's a couple guys out there. If I was the editor of a really true newspaper or TV station, I would fire everybody there and hire a couple of these people. And that would be real journalism. But you're not getting it in the New York Times. You're not getting it in the Washington Post. I remember when I was researching on my own back in 2002 and 3 and 4, 9/11, and happened to be going to New York a lot. And finally got to look at some of the New York Times reporting. And when I had some questions to ask, some real solid questions, I tried to get to the reporters, and I tried to get to the newspaper saying, hey, this doesn't make sense. You guys I've got some information here that might help you. You know what they did? They would not talk to me. They said, we stand on our story and we don't need any help from you. I said, well, I thought you're a newspaper. Don't you want information? Maybe you missed this. And the problem is that some of the information we were uncovering would have shown that the government story was as full of holes as Swiss cheese, and that wouldn't have worked with the cover-up they were doing. So they were basically covering up too. And then when you find out that they're CIA operatives working as journalists in the New York Times, you know you got a problem. So anyway, let's look at some of the things that tell you that this could be. The Orlando Pulse nightclub isn't adding up at all. And the official stories aren't meshing with any of the footage that's coming out. And there isn't much of it. I'm telling you, when you start looking at the footage, now here's some observations. With hundreds of people inside, where's all the footage of the actual gun battle? There was supposedly a 3-hour standoff, but not a single video? Nothing? No, nothing. That's strange to begin with. Where are all the reporters? Somebody's got to get in there. And two, the bar itself makes a tweet. Somebody in the bar that says a gunman ran away. Makes no sense unless you're trying to create more of a storyline. Tweeting? Give me a break. You got a guy with a gun. That's not the first thing I'm going to do is go to my cell phone. My goodness. Now 3, eyewitnesses. Accounts from people that were inside the club during the shooting are clearly people that are acting and not at all what you see from drama affected people who were through an actual event. And you got to just look at the people that were interviewed. It's so obvious. You're going to have to go get that because I can't do it, of course, on a radio show. But that's another point. And we're going to get into a couple of those eyewitnesses. We've talked about them during the week. The guy with the hat and the American flag shirt. Now, what about this? People you do see aren't at all cut up, hurt, blood, and are being moved by people clearly not traumatized by the event. Some even stop for a camera shot. And this looks so much like Sandy Hook. The triage, too, when you look at they showed you they showed you gurneys, but none of them were being used. You looked at those people moving around the triage where they're supposed to bring out the injured. They were casually walking around. It was similar to Sandy Hook when they had a ring around the rosy going in the school and out the school, in the school and out the school. Now, let's look at another point here. So we have this complete... Then, of course, you see the fire trucks being blocked off. Fire trucks coming in. You don't see one ambulance come in. Fire trucks are there. They're good. They can blockade the roads. Very interesting. Now, like I said, where are the gurneys? And gurneys of the dead being wheeled out. 50 people is a lot of people dead. And think about it. They decided they were dead even before the coroner. Police aren't supposed to make that distinction. How did they know there were 50? So first it was 20, then a little bit later it was 50. They didn't have time to check that out. And during that commotion, if this was a real event, I swear, and we did have a real newspaper, one person would get a shot that was different than what you see. But because it's a cordoned off government PSYOPs campaign, you don't get anything but what they want you to see. Now, where's all the blood? You know, people that are 150 pounds bleed about 1.8 gallons of blood. With 50 dead people should have been coated with blood. There was not one speck of blood on the guys that they were showing. Oh, I was inside on top of one of the people that was shot. I didn't see one speck of blood on that guy. And let me tell you something. If we had real live newspapers and TV stations that were actually competing to get stories to show that the government's full of you-know-what, that's what sells. That's what people want to see, and they would have done it. As grisly as it might be, that's the way it really is. It doesn't happen anymore because these are controlled events. Get it through your head, people. Nobody died there. Somebody came up to me the other day and said, aren't you a little scared now to go out? I said, hell no. The chances of me getting, you're not going to, what are you going to get killed in one of their staged events? So here we go. We have a number of questions that need to be answered, and they're not. Because the whole thing is a PSYOPs. Now, think about this. The shooter. How could a 150-pound man smuggle a giant assault rifle into a club that more than likely has guards checking for weapons at the door? Now, don't they have security cameras? Of course they do. Where are those pictures? Oh, they don't have security cameras, because I think one of the things they probably did is they took that building over. Our government officials took over that nightclub. Of course, they have complicity with the owners. And anybody that came there that night that really wanted to get in got turned away earlier and was told that it was a private party and there's an overflow. You can't get in. That really was probably what they did. And so they can control who's in there, who's out there, they have their few little actors. Then they do their little staged event. But let's say that their story's true. How could this guy, he's carrying an AR rifle, right? Assault rifle. Now, for the number of shots and the number of people that were killed, he had to have a lot of magazines, right? They come in magazines. Now, in California, to buy a magazine, you could only have 10 shots in it. So think about how many he would have had to carry in there. He's a 150-pound guy. He'd have to look worse than Rambo. How was he going to get in there with him? He'd have to have 30, 40 magazines. I don't know what the limit is in Florida, but he'd have to have a whole... Then he'd have to have... They supposedly had also strapped on a bomb. His assault rifle, another weapon. Come on. That doesn't happen. You know it's BS right from that point. And if it was true, why didn't they show the security cameras? The reason they didn't show the security cameras was because it didn't take place that way. And that's exactly what I'm getting at. So, that's just a few items I wanted to get through. And I want to get to a couple more here. If I can... I wrote down some notes here. So we're going to, we got through the gurneys. Where's all the blood? Right? How could a 150 man smuggle all those weapons in? Right? So that you're starting to get the picture here. Now, listen to this. Reports also say the shooter called 911 and claimed ISIS during the attack. Sound like something an active shooter would do? The guy's in there killing people, and he's going to call 911 and claim that. Now, they also today came out and said that he not only did that, but he called a TV producer, and he had a big conversation, and the TV producer gets on. He's actually an actor. During that time, he also called a good friend. Oh, my goodness. This guy was Rambo on steroids. Man, and where's the police? You think he's good? Where is the tear gas? Well, you got hostages, so you don't want to throw tear gas in there, right? I mean, this is such he's in the bathroom with 30 people. Now, I think those are pretty good points so far to get you to think twice. And now listen to this. How would he be able, he's making all these phone calls, he's, all this propaganda they're telling you. How do you be able to shoot a cop in the head and have enough ammo for a 3-hour standoff? Like I mentioned, then they show you the cop's helmet that saved his life. Well, if he was that close to the cop, why didn't the cop shoot him right there? Because it never happened. Now, he would need so many bullets, 49 rounds alone for the dead. I mean, if this guy was a marksman, you know how many magazines? It's impossible. You've been had, America, again. Because you're just believing what you see from these goofy newspapers and these goofy TV stations that aren't giving you the truth. Remember this, none of these witnesses are smeared in blood. You didn't see one independent picture of anything, which definitely would have happened in a real live scene if they didn't cordon it off and turn it into a government compound, so to speak. Now, none of these people look like they've been through any life or death situation. None of them. None of them at all, and I've watched it all the ones they give you, and there's 4 or 5 guys, and one guy that you're going to see had a beard, he had that funny hat on, and he had the American flag shirt. He was used. He was one of their main guys, and you'll see one of the more interesting things that somebody brought up to me that I pulled up here that I'm looking at right now. Let's look at this real quick for me to get my bearings here. But this is amazing. And maybe I'll explain it, then play a little bit of it. That the guy calls it, "This is how I see the world." And this guy I definitely would hire as a reporter. He did a heck of a job after the fact. Imagine if he was there as a real reporter, the truth you would get. But anyway, this picture, this shot they showed was this 3 guys and the guy with that hat carrying a guy with a bandana. Supposedly his leg has got a leg wound. There's no blood. The bandana's clean. The guy that is with the hat said he was laying on top of people and he crawled out of that scene. He had not one bit of blood on him. In fact, he looked like he was, he was just pulled off or he was reading a script. Now, the scenes they show are them walking down the sidewalk carrying this guy supposedly where? Where's the ambulances? Later on, they put him in I believe it was the same scene, they put him in a pickup truck and all cops are around. Now, that's ridiculous. Now, some really good sleuth photographer did a close-up, because if you look across the street, you'll see a building, and he did a close-up of that building, and then he looked at the direction they were going, and about a block away, he also blew up what was the Pulse nightclub sign, the exact place where the incident supposedly occurred, and they were walking 2 blocks away towards it. Now, that makes absolutely no sense. Absolutely no sense. So, let's see what he says here for a minute. And I think I have enough time to play a little bit of this. And let's see here. Can do this real quick. And let's see what he has to say.
Hi, this is how I see the world. And it is Monday morning, 6:30 in the morning where I am. Of course, I couldn't sleep. When these kinds of government psyops take place, they sort of fill up my brain and my wheels don't stop turning. So I got up very early today and thought I'd go through messages because I'm very behind on messages, commenting, or rather responding to your comments on my videos. And I didn't get very far when, of course, as expected, a subscriber alerted me to a very huge mistake in the narrative of this story. Greg McKenzie, subscriber, astutely sent me a link to something that really desperately needs explaining by the authorities. I actually had a thought yesterday that these images you see on the screen here of these people carrying these crisis actors down the street away from the nightclub to help were actually filmed at another time. If somebody out there can collect EXIF data off videos, a lot of the times that stuff can be scrubbed and manipulated, but I'm hoping that some of the more technical investigators can do that work, because I'm pretty sure that these scenes you're seeing here before you were not recorded on the night of the alleged shooting, which we all know obviously did not take place. And of course I'm seeing in the comments a lot of people saying, this really happened. I know someone who knew someone who knew someone. It's so pathetic. They're probably paid to do that. But, I just say, give me proof. Give me proof. If I'm wrong, I will make a video and say I was wrong about something. Just give me some proof. That's all I ask. Is it that hard for you to do? You knew someone who knew someone? Give me some names. Give us something we can actually look into. Help us prove ourselves wrong, because we'll do it, because we only want the truth to get out there. So do your job and stop saying my hairdresser's brother's mother's best friend's dog groomer's war hero friend knew someone who worked in the bar who actually urinated next to a girl who had a conversation with someone whose mother was actually there. Give us some proof for a change. So, Greg McKenzie pointed out something extremely important. I'm showing you this clip here from CNN because CNN has now, of course, put these huge banners of words over the images so that you really can't see what the hell's going on. They love to do that. We don't need these big words here, CNN, CIA. We don't need them. Okay? Thank you, though. We can actually read small words, too. But that's what they're doing nowadays, making a big show out of everything. Because the attention span of the sheep is extremely short. So anyway, I want to draw your attention, as Greg drew my attention to, this building right here. Okay? Now I'm going to show you also, this is a video I made yesterday that has this clip without the words on it, and you can see the video clearly right here. The building right here. Also, at this mark right here, you see the building right here. And these people are obviously walking, well, they're walking this direction, obviously the way they're facing. So, this is, by the way, the Dunkin' Donuts right here. Are you catching the drift now? Here's another image. Dunkin' Donuts right here. Now watch. What do you see? See this pinkish sign right here? This is Pulse nightclub where the shooting took place. These people are carrying victims toward the nightclub. Bravo, Greg, on catching this. He sent me this. Here you see Pulse, here's Dunkin' Donuts, and here's that building, stand-up MRI of Orlando. The people were on this sidewalk down here, going in this direction, toward the nightclub. This whole street was blocked off, as you see in the images. See all these cops down here blocking off this road, this entire road. You can even see it here. They're all back on this other end as well. This whole road's blocked off. for the filming of the crisis actors being carried in the wrong direction. So, I'm adding that on my list of questions to ask the FBI, who I'm going to be calling today. So thank you, Greg. I am always very grateful to my subscribers for participating in this research.
Okay, so he's calling the FBI.
Pulse nightclub
Okay, wait a
shooting.
second here. Shut him off. I don't want to. He's got some good information. So he's calling the FBI with this information. You know how far that's going to get. And I hope he doesn't get into too much trouble. But I'm going to try to contact him. Somebody that go to his videos, get me a contact. I'd like to have him on. He does some really good stuff. And it is a combination of a lot of people being really skeptical, presenting this information. I can't come to any other conclusion. I saw the same pictures myself, that it's a staged event. There's much, much more. I don't have any time. I'm going to come back tomorrow, and we're going to look at a couple of the crisis actors. One, Christine Lineman, we found a Facebook of her prior to this event, and it seems to be really weird. That's just one crisis actor that's been caught so far. But there'll be more. So hopefully this helps you understand, because this little scene here is really indicative of it shows you what the extremes they'll go to. And this problem starts here and blossoms out to the major people in your controlling your country and owning you. Hook, line, and sinker. We'll be back tomorrow on the Investigative Journal. Good night.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.